Let's jump into this. So we are looking at YouTube thumbnails today, which is obviously the little cards that you have to advertise your video when you are on YouTube that you can add in as a thumbnail. We're going to start by searching what Canva has for you. So if you start to put in YouTube up here, it will show you what they have, and they come up with tutorial YouTube thumbnails, which is the most common thing that you'll need to have them for. And again, there is, as always, lots of different options. The thing to think about with these is it's a good idea to use one of these as a base template because it's exactly the right size for you, right file size, right dimensions. But the critical thing to be thinking about is what is your audience looking for, as well as reflecting your brand in what you do. Your thumbnails need to reflect that. So are you, what is your tutorial about? Who's it going to appeal to? What would they visually like to see? Is it loud? Is it bright? Is it funky? Is it cool? Is it chic? Is it beautiful? Is it is it aesthetically pleasing? Is it aimed at kids? Is it fun? Is it funky? These are wacky, bright, all those kind of things are the things you need to think about before you start to design one. So obviously these ones are options for you to choose from. And other things you need to bear in mind is the side that the text goes on and the side that your pictures tend to go on. They do give you the option for both. Obviously, you can move them around, but bear in mind when you're designing your thumbnails, what goes over the top of it within YouTube. So you get like the little timer clock and things. We'll just jump onto YouTube just to have a little look at some tutorial stuff. I've just searched for tutorials just to see what generally comes up. So things to bear in mind is that you get like these little bits will pop up if you hover over someone's video, watch later, the little logo, add to your queue, the clock, the timer here. So those bits will, while they don't take up loads of space, it's worth bearing in mind what is going to be covered when you have that tutorial. There is like, I don't know the specific statistic, but pictures of yourself, of a person on your thumbnails, directly looking at the camera is supposedly meant to perform better than others, but it's something for you to play around in and what you do. But as you can see, quite a lot whenever you Google anything for YouTube, loads of stuff comes up with people's faces, doesn't it? You want it to stand out, you want it to make an impact, but you also want it to be fitting to what your content is. You don't want it to be really bold and bright and leery if that's then going to be a tutorial potentially about learning a classical piece of music. Potentially, it all depends who your audience is. The more you understand your audience, the better you'll know what to do. Obviously, you can do things like include graphics from what you've been working on. I'll try not to hover on them, otherwise it's going to start the video. So if you're doing like a game tutorial, you might have a clip from the actual game on it. And this one's obviously, this one here that we're looking at is gone quite cartoony because it is about a game. And the makeup tutorials, that's quite bold, lovely eye contact with the photo and this nice coloured edge around it, which is a really funky way of doing it. This has got like the 3 steps bit in it. Just things to consider. So it's always worth having a little look, seeing what other people are doing and then seeing if that fits and then adapting it from that. Some just go text-based, but there is, as always with these things, people like people. So the more you have human interaction for people, the better it will perform. So yeah, consider putting a face on your thumbnails. That's just a little look at what is out there at the moment. You can go and have a little look yourself to do it. So we're going to jump back over and then we'll click into some of these so you can see. Obviously it's the same as within Canva, you can always adapt everything that you do. So going on, as I said, be careful about what you put on certain sides, just show you how you can easily change that around. So you could just, all you need to do here is to format your text so that it aligns the other side, and then I would just group these all together, which they are already, and you can just move that across to the other side. If you wanted to keep that photo, you could just flip it and then it just completely transforms it over. And then you don't have to worry about the clock icon and the other bits if that photo is not going to be as important for you. So in terms of having, as we said, a person on the thumbnail, it doesn't always have to be a photograph of yourself. If you're not comfortable doing that, you could always search in the stock photography for things to do with what it is you're doing. You could search for anyone. It doesn't have to, it could be anybody's face that you put on there. So you can always make use of the photos section and searching in the stock photography for what you can do. But that's how easily you could just, if you loved all of that, you just easily modify it. I would probably suggest keeping your text on that left-hand side so that you can keep it clear for all the icons that are going to pop over just in case. But as I say, it does it exactly the right size for you. So it is ready to go for YouTube. Let's go back to look at the options for them. So again, you can just pick any that you like. Something nice and bright and bold does work well. You want it to stand out. Again, as I said, depending on your aesthetic, even if you are going for soft and or maybe even this is like really quite aesthetic, that's quite aesthetically pleasing and very kind of modern, but it still stands out. It's got clear text. You want your text to be really easily readable, nothing too long in what it is. As you can see, most of these are all 3 or 4 word titles. So it's just deciding what's going to stand out and make the most of what you are hoping people will click and watch. I'll take you over to ones I put together, which some of you will have seen these obviously at the start of our tutorials. And I just adapted this from one of the ones that I actually adapted it from this one because I really liked the font. I broke my branding rule about sticking with the 2 fonts, but I will always consistently use this font. This is my font as normal, but this font here, I will stick to it for what I do on YouTube. So yeah, broke my rule slightly there, but I won't change it week by week. I would like to create some consistency because you want that brand recognition. You want people to start recognizing that kind of thumbnail as or anything you put out anywhere as your brand and what you're doing. So obviously here I've included a picture of myself, and I've done that cut out and glow feature, which we covered in last week's tutorial. If you haven't been able to watch that yet, or you are not on the mailing list and didn't receive that, obviously you can access it over on YouTube. It will be up there. And that is the cut out and glow tutorial. Or if you are in the Facebook group, you'll be able to look back through the replays and catch it there too if you want to just really work on doing that effect. But yes, I kept it very simple and just used a background image, which I have changed the transparency of. So you can always do that with a photograph. I'll just go so it's a bit clearer. For this photograph here, for example, you might like it, but you might find it's a little bit too distracting. Maybe you want to put something else over the top of it. So you can always fade them out using the transparency. So you click on that, head on over to this icon here, and it's your transparency, and then you can just fade out the photo. You can make it completely disappear, or then just play with it as it comes in. So that's a nice way of having a photograph, but if you're finding it a bit too distracting, just take that transparency down. And then you've got a different way of playing with it, which is really useful. So heading back over to these, I've obviously stuck with my brand colors, my orange and my black. Got my photograph that I've just faded out, and then I'm just sticking with this. The heart is one of the emojis that I use all the time, so that kind of keeps my brand congruency going. Yeah, and then I'm just at the moment, I'm playing with the idea of putting something to do with the topic on as an object, trying to break it up each time I do it. I've used a logo there because I'm talking about Canva in it. I've added in the bold outline on the photograph there, which is something you can do. So another thing we'll do then, let's have a look at doing, there isn't exactly like some definite things I think you should always do. It's about playing around and you yourself understanding your brand, how you want to be seen and who's seeing you. What does your audience like to see? This may not fit with your topic and your mood and your vibe of your brand. Mine is quite fun and quite vibrant, so that works for this. It also helps me to demonstrate bits of what the tutorials are about, but you might like yours to be a little bit more understated, a little bit more muted. So obviously you've got, as I said, the technique of fading out the photos, using the pro photos to, if you can't get good photographs for things to put on your designs, make use of the stock photography here. That's a really useful thing to do. I will just show you, as we saw on those tutorials there, let's just do a little bit with, it's that makeup tutorial, wasn't it? You had the little extra border. That was actually quite a nice little feature. Well, then you've got like the dividers and things, but we'll just have a little look at doing, so she's just put a coloured border around hers, which again just gives it an extra bit to stand out. So we'll just look at doing that. Show you how you can do that. So let's make a new page. We'll keep it as if it's that, and I'll show you how I would do it. There might potentially be, let's get rid of the photograph actually. We'll just, oh yeah, so you can always, when you put a photograph in, always remember this little tip. You right click, you can detach the image from the background. On the preset designs from Canva, they'll always have that fixed as the background, but you can detach it and then it becomes a loose photograph again, which we'll keep like that for the moment because we'll do something with the border. And if you want to add in a photograph and make it your background, say for example this one, rather than having to stretch it about, if you want to actually make it your background, just right click and go set image as background, and it will completely fill it in, and then you've got it locked ready to be your background. But so let's play with the border. So to do just a plain border, you've obviously detached your photograph. We'll just send that back behind the writing. You can do this with your layers. So you just go send backward, so it just sits behind it. And then really simply, you could do straight away just a plain white border. There we go, you can make that fit how you want. You could have a chunky border like that, or then you can, let's make it just like thin like it was on the example. There we go. So if you use it from the sides, and then Canva will make the photograph fit for you. And then you've got a white border. If you then wanted to change that to be a different color, you could click on your background, come over to your colors, and you could make it to match the color that's in the document already, or you could make it a completely different color if you wanted it to really stand out. Have a play with these colors. You could definitely make it two-tone, so you had one color at the top and side and a different color on the other side. And the way that I would do that is that I would add a colored element. So I would just search for a shape, which here we'll just go for this shape. And let's make it, we'll go for that color first, and then we'll choose some color within that spectrum, just so it becomes like a toned thing. Yeah, let's go for something like that. So that's that shade. I would then send this backward, send it backward again. Whoop. Undo that. Don't want to lose the photo. And then you could just fill this in to there, and then send that backward. And then you've got like a two-tone color around there if you wanted to do something in two colors. You could also experiment with some photos that you could put behind there for different colors. So let's just duplicate that again. We'll get rid of that color square. Just having a bit of a play with you guys here as I'm working on it, thinking about what you could do and how I know that you can do different things within here. So you've got some jazzy backgrounds you could add in. That then gives you a nice funky border. You could choose some different bits. So there's all different bits in your background. You could do a pattern, you could do a little landscape, and that just gives you a little slither. You could do something really funky there. That looks really cool. So that's a really another good way of doing it. You can just add in a background. You've got like textures and all sorts in here that you can play with. So that's how you can create some different borders, and then that's got a bit of shade in it rather than just being a block color. That's quite funky. And those colors go nicely too. That works really well. So that's a way of adding a little border for something different to do on your YouTube thumbnails. Then obviously, as we were looking before, you've got the option of doing cutouts with the color edge around it, which is quite popular on YouTube. You do see a lot of them doing that. And then you've got the image and eye contact going on too. See, I've used the background of myself as a background to use, but you can use all sorts of different things that you'd like. And then it's really just a case of choosing what works for you and having a play with how you want it to look, and the different things you can add in. I guess you don't want it too cluttered ultimately. You want your fonts to be nice and clear. You want it to be legible. It's obviously not big when it's actually on YouTube. I mean, that's the size of it on my desktop, but lots of people obviously look at their phone for stuff. So it's going to be, I mean, it's going to be this kind of size, if not smaller, when it's seen. So you want it to be clear, stand out, eye-catching, but still has those nods towards your brand. You don't want it too cluttered with extra stuff. But there are some good options here on Canva for you to use. They've obviously tried to cover the different things people would do for tutorials. There's not a gazillion ideas like with all of their stuff, but there's a few templates that you could definitely get started with that just gives you the idea or the basics. So you've got like the shape, the different ways of doing things. That's probably too small, I would say, for YouTube, but there's a few options within that set. But it just gives you a starting base, and then you could change things yourself if you would prefer to do that. Obviously, you can always make a blank document and just build it yourself. But as with everything, as we spoke about with the Instagram, as I talk about all the time with your brand, whatever you choose, try and stick with it consistently. Not necessarily forever, not for life, but at least for 3 or 4 bits that you're going to put out, just so it's seen, and then people can start to associate that with you and recognize it with you. So yeah, give these things a try. Obviously, a few things there you can play with if you've not done before, like you've got your background transparency, adding the borders, adding the different backgrounds, adding your backgrounds, or adding a block of color using a shape and then putting that to the background, adding in your photos. You make use of that stock photography for anything that you need to go in it. If you don't have slick photographs like this, make use of the stock portfolio that's here on Canva. Or of course, you can upload your own photographs and do things. So yeah, have a play. As always, share them in the group if you would like some feedback or you just want to show what you've done. I'd love to see what you're doing and implementing from these tutorials. And yes, obviously, if you are watching me on YouTube, then give us a like, give us a subscribe so you don't miss out on the future tutorials that will be coming up. And if you are not yet in the Facebook group, come find us, Branding with KTN, head on over to there. And I look forward to seeing you on the next video.